Hey everyone, James Niggemeyer here. Thanks for tuning back into my YouTube channel. Sitting in the garage here, thinking about what is something that's relevant and applicable for the time frame that we're in. We're rounding out the month of May, moving into June, and for most parts of the country, we're talking about the end of spring and what is the beginning of summer. In that, we're talking about post-spawn to summer, early summer type patterns. And I want to say that two of the best ways to catch them this time of year, actually I'll give you three ways. Top water, then there's deep cranking, and then there's the Carolina rig. And I mean, I say deep cranking, but I mean mid-range to deeper cranking. Those three things really, they win tournaments this time of year. So those are your best ways to catch fish in the post-spawn into early summer. I'm going to cover one of those techniques that's been around for a really long time and is just as effective now as it's ever been, and it's something you just don't hear a whole lot about. And I'm going to go over how you rig it and then 5 of the best baits that you're going to want to put on a Carolina rig. First, I'm going to go over the gear that you're going to need. I actually like a 7.5 foot rod. I like a longer rod, a heavy to medium heavy action rod, depending upon which rod you're fishing with. I'm actually using a Lew's. It's a Magnum heavy cover, and it's actually the same rod that I would flip with. I like that longer rod, that longer heavier rod, because a lot of times with that Carolina rig, you throw it way out there. It's on the end of a long cast, one eats it, then you have that leader, and it's kind of out there behind there. And you need to be able to pick up that slack, move that slack, set the hook, and gain control of what could potentially be a really big fish out there on the end of a long cast. So the heavier power rod really helps me do that. So that's the rod. The reel, this is a Custom Pro, Team Lew's Custom Pro. It's a 7.5 to 1 gear ratio, I believe. Yeah, it's a 7.5 to 1 gear ratio reel. I've got 16 to 20 pound test gamma fluorocarbon. And then that's going to be my main line, and then onto that I'm going to tie on some leader material. Obviously Carolina rig is main line, and then you're going to need some leader material. The places that you're fishing in the country is going to really determine the size of the line you're going to want. I use Gamma Polyflex, which is a copolymer, and I use pretty much like 17 to 20 pound test Gamma copoly. But I've gone down as low as 12. Just depends on where I'm at in the country. If the water's super clear and maybe not a lot of cover, not a lot of things, a lot of snags to negotiate, not a lot of big fish, I might drop down in line size to say all the way down to 12. But big key here, fluorocarbon mainline for the sensitivity and the lack of stretch. Going to copolymer or a mono, it's less denser, so this line has a tendency not to drag down on the bottom, not to sink. So I don't want to give you the idea that this bait's floating up back here behind the weight, but it doesn't sink nearly as fast as fluorocarbon. It gives that bait some mobility to move around and settle in the water column, and it doesn't just kind of drag the bait. It just gives a little bit more free moving ability with the mono or copolymer. So I use a copolymer Gamma. I generally use 3/0, 4/0, 5/0. The one that I've really settled into is an Owner all-purpose worm hook. I really like that. 3/0's a really, versatile size in that it'll work for a lot of different Carolina rig baits. I'm going to need anything from a 3/4 ounce to a 1 ounce weight. I've got here a Strike King Tour Grade Tungsten Carolina rig weight. I truly believe that the tungsten, you can feel more and it transmits a lot more through the rod. You can tell what kind of cover or bottom substrate that you're pulling through. So I like that tungsten for that. Either like I said, 3/4 or 3/4 or 1 ounce. And that might sound heavy, but the important thing is you want to be down there on the bottom rooting around and creating kind of a commotion so that it draws fish to the bait. That sinker knocking down there in the rocks and the gravels and the shell and different things like that, that's gonna help fish kind of hone in on your bait. So, and I've used just regular 3/4 and 1 ounce bullet weights, lead bullet weights. That works also. I like beads, these little plastic beads. I used to use the glass beads like this. I think this is like a 6mm or 8mm, but a little glass bead. And I used to use those, but I would break them because that heavy weight would hit that. So I just go to a plastic one. I like that because it kind of adds a little buffer between there and my knot for my barrel swivel. So I want to say that that's like a number 7 barrel swivel, if you can see that. I want to go over even how to rig it. Some people are kind of intimidated by the Carolina rig because it looks like you have a lot going on. And it's really not that difficult at all. So I'm gonna go into the rigging process, how to tie one up. This is kind of Carolina rigging 101. Number 1, here's my main line. This is either 16 or 20 pound test gamma fluorocarbon. And I'm gonna put, this one's actually a green pumpkin colored tour grade tungsten weight. So I'm sliding that on to my main line. That's number 1. Then goes my bead. Right, there's my bead. So you have weight and a bead, and then I'm actually gonna tie on my my swivel. I'm gonna go ahead and cut that off. I'm actually gonna go ahead and tie on my swivel. And if you've watched my YouTube channel, I like to talk about the Eugene slip knot, because the Eugene slip knot's a tremendous knot. And that's just what I'm tying here. Ran the line through, and then just use whatever knot you really prefer. And obviously I would wet the knot here at this point, but for demonstration purposes it's not critical. So cut that nice and tight. And then I have my 3/0 owner hook, all-purpose owner hook. And I'm just tying that directly to the swivel. If you're a fan of the Palomar knot, the only way to tie it is to disconnect the swivel first. So I'm gonna just show you kind of how you'd have to tie on the Palomar knot. If that's, I know a lot of people like the Palomar knot. So you're just gonna go ahead and tie that Palomar knot as you would anything, and run it through. Of course, this is where you would wet the knot before you cinch it. Cut it nice and close. Again, now I'm going to attach my main line to the fluorocarbon. I actually like the Palomar knot for mono and braid, but I love the Eugene slip knot for fluorocarbon. For me, I just have fewer issues. So there it is. It's pretty simple. Yeah, I had my leader line out of this spool right here, and I would just strip off however much of that leader line. As a general rule, a 3-foot leader on a Carolina rig is what you want. I've caught them with a 24-inch leader, and as much as like a 5, or even like really long. I don't know that I've done a 6-foot, but as much as about a 4 or 5 foot leader. It just depends on what kind of cover you're around, but that's pretty much how you tie it. I would recommend starting with at least a 3-foot leader. Now I'm gonna go into the top 5 Carolina rig shapes or plastics that you wanna put on your Carolina rig. Number 1, I'm gonna say that more people have caught fish on a Carolina rig with, it's kind of a toss-up, but that's just a lizard. That's a Strike King Rage lizard. There's so many lizards on the market, but a lizard would be number 1. It just makes such a tremendous Carolina rig bait. I think most people probably started throwing a lizard. And then number 2, I would say, definitely a French fry type bait. This is a Strike King Super Fry. This is just a real do nothing type French fry type bait. Works extremely well. And then another one that works really well. This one works really well for just about, well, all these work for all species, but this one works really well for like smallmouth and spotted bass, and that's a Strike King game hog type creature bait. That's a really good one also. The other one that I've done really well with over the years is just a regular old finesse worm. Strike King finesse worm, 6.5 inch, green pumpkin, watermelon red. This one happens to be red bug. So that's a great Carolina rig shape. And then lastly, but definitely not least, a shad body type Strike King caffeine shad, a fluke type bait, if you will. That works really well on a Carolina rig. Those are my top 5 Carolina rig baits. That's Carolina rig fishing 101. And obviously you've got your hook on there. So we'll just, to kind of bring it all in here, then you just pretty much, rig your bait on there like normal. And slide it up on there. Like I said, a 3/0's probably as good as any. And obviously, the bigger the bait, the larger the size of hook you're going to want to go to. That really becomes your Carolina rig setup right there. You pretty much have your weight, and then your leader, and then your bait. This is a shorter Carolina rig because I've cut for the demonstration purposes. But that's Carolina rig fishing. That's it's a tremendous fish catcher. If you're new to the Carolina rig, right now, May into June, through the summer months, that's Carolina rig. I want to thank you guys all for tuning into my YouTube channel, for watching the videos, for subscribing. If you guys haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Almost to 2,000 subscribers, so I want to thank all my subscribers for watching the videos and the commenting and giving me a thumbs up when you like the stuff that I'm producing. That's pretty much it, and until next time, good fishing.